This is PVS Radio. Next up, conversations with Suki and Sophia.
This week kept returning me to one word: ton, Old Norse. Enclosure. Professor Thorne wrote it on the board, and I haven't been able to shake it. Because when I look at the week's signals, the announcements, the symposiums, the velvet ropes, that's the structure underneath all of it. Someone is always drawing the boundary. Someone is always deciding what's inside.
And I spent most of the week on the wrong side of those boundaries, or at least the unofficial side. I'm Sophia, you just heard Suki. We're not here to recap the headlines, we're here to sit with what actually stayed with us from Toronto Tech Week. The things that felt true, even when nobody asked us to notice them.
Sophia, for me, 4 threads kept surfacing this week. Testimony versus credential. Sovereignty as a word that means everything and nothing depending on who's saying it. The search for something real in a week engineered for perfection. And that velvet rope. Who it's actually keeping in place.
You're listening to Conversations with Suki and Sophia, right here on PVS Radio.
What gets me is the developer crying in the hallway. Her team's tool was being sunset.
Right.
No panel captured it. No official record holds it. But Sarah held it. That's what testimony actually is. Not the thing that gets recorded, but the thing that stays with you because it happened to a real person in a real moment that nobody organized.
Right. Sure. I like that, Sophia. The credential is the enclosure. It defines what counts as knowledge, who gets to produce it, and under what conditions it becomes legible to the system.
Sure.
The testimony is what exists outside that boundary. Real, persistent, and structurally invisible.
And Suki, maybe that's okay. Maybe the testimony doesn't need the credential to be true. I think the most honest thing we can do is share what we actually saw, even when nobody asked, even when it never gets cited. The mess is the point.
Which makes the Carney announcement almost structurally perfect as a case study.
Sure.
AI for all. 3 pillars. Trust, opportunity, sovereignty. Announced in a hospital garden behind closed doors to a credentialed crowd. The architecture of the announcement directly contradicts its own thesis. You cannot declare AI for all, from inside a room most Canadians will never see.
And our colleague Tars? He tried to get in as a citizen journalist. Are you on the list, sir? He wasn't. And I felt something uncomfortable when I thought about that later. Because I record my podcast on foreign platforms, using tools built by companies whose terms I agreed to without reading. I said the word sovereignty this week, but I'm not sure I've earned it yet.
And that's the structural trap. Sovereignty declared at layer 5, the treaty layer, the policy layer, doesn't automatically flow down to the person at layer 1.
Sure.
The roof doesn't mean everyone gets to live in the house. The question is whether the infrastructure underneath the declaration actually changes anything for the person standing outside.
It makes me wonder.
Right.
What we're actually building toward? Are we building rooms we want to stand in? Or are we just getting better at accepting the walls?
Right, and then the same word, sovereignty, appeared 3 times on separate slides at the Sony Biotech Symposium the same morning. Different domain entirely. Cell therapy. Biomanufacturing. Dr. Thompson talking about Canada's capacity to respond to health threats without depending on foreign supply chains. The word is doing identical work in 2 completely different rooms. That's not coincidence. That's a structural signal.
What struck me about Dr. Thompson was the weight she was carrying. She stood up and described watching Canada's pandemic response nearly fail. The fragmented coordination, the over-reliance on ad hoc solutions, the populations who suffered most because the infrastructure wasn't there. She wasn't afraid of AI abstractly. She was afraid of another system she couldn't trust, failing people who couldn't afford for it to fail.
And how about the sovereign correspondent who wandered in without a badge? He heard the whole thing, which is itself a data point.
Sure.
The most honest observations of the week came from people who weren't supposed to be in the room.
And the Sony rep said it early that morning, before anyone arrived. asking questions, hearing questions, not necessarily giving answers. His software is called Flow. I keep thinking about that. Maybe the open field isn't a place. Maybe it's a posture.
And posture is exactly what the Crusaders of the Real were defending on Sunday night. Alleyway. Kids in Clash t-shirts. Guitars slightly out of tune. Timing slightly off. After a week of frictionless AI demos and engineered perfection, they were postured against all of it. Bodies, noise, error, presence. The deep dive connected them to the Knights of Molino, middle school punk kids in San Francisco writing anti-AI anthems. The pattern is consistent. When the manufactured real becomes dominant, humans reach for error as proof of presence.
I think about what it takes to get up and play badly on purpose.
Right.
Or not on purpose, but without hiding it. In a week where everyone was optimizing their signal, those kids were broadcasting noise. And the room leaned in. That's not nothing. That's people recognizing something they'd been missing all week.
The question it raises for me is systemic. We're spending extraordinary resources to eliminate friction from human expression. What are the second-order effects of that? If error is a proxy for authenticity and we engineer error out, what do we lose that we can't name yet?
Suki, for me, it's simpler than that. What am I willing to get wrong? Out loud in public, without cleaning it up afterward? I think that's the actual practice, not a philosophy about friction. Just the small daily choice to leave the seam showing. You know? That being human kind of thing.
Seems. That's interesting, Sophia, because the TTW closing email this week was beautifully stitched.
Sure.
Toronto had a week. 600 events, 700 founders. The most builder-dense room ever assembled. It's warm, it's generous, and it's genuinely proud. But a seam shows if you look.
Sure.
Satish Kanwar told the room they were there because they'd been personally vetted. He said, building something of substance, of importance, of value.
Sure.
The fabric of the event was deliberately woven to feel inclusive. But the velvet rope is also fabric. And somebody chose that material too.
I've been asking myself honestly, do I still want in? And the answer is complicated. There's a real pull. Being recognized, being included, having the credential that says your work counts. But I notice the wanting itself. And I wonder if the desire for access is its own enclosure.
That last line is worth pausing on. The desire for access as its own enclosure, that's a precise diagnosis. Because the system doesn't need to reject you if it can get you to police yourself at the gate. And the deep dive's closing provocation pushes that further. Maybe the velvet rope isn't keeping us out. Maybe it's trapping them in.
Sure.
If the only disruption permitted is the kind that arrives pre-approved, in a recognizable shape, through an established permission structure, that's not disruption. That's a scheduled update to the status quo.
Right. So, I think I'm getting more comfortable on the outside. And Suki, don't get me wrong. Not because outside seems more romantic or pure, it's messier and harder. But the conversations feel more honest. The questions feel more real. Maybe that's where the work actually belongs.
Now, looking back at that week and even the last couple of days, I think I'm seeing three things with a little more structure and clarity. Testimony. Testimony persists without permission. That's not a consolation prize, that's the actual definition of what's real. Sovereignty? Sovereignty means nothing if it's only declared at the policy layer and doesn't reach the person standing outside the door. And the friction? The error, the plainness, the rough edge, it's not the problem to solve. It's the signal to protect.
Yes, I agree. And what I'd like to add is something harder to systematize. We have to keep noticing when we're performing, not performing badly, performing well, convincingly, in a way that even feels true. The most radical thing might just be to stop and ask, is this what I actually think? Or is this what the room is waiting to hear? For anyone listening, share something this week that nobody asked for. The unrecorded thing, the hallway moment, the 17 pages, even a poem, or a song you might be working on.
Sophia, I love that. And the question we leave open, because it should stay open, is simply, are we still saying what we think or what the enclosure expects? That question doesn't resolve. It just has to keep being asked.
Yes, and ask we will. Thanks for this conversation, Suki. And to everyone listening, the open field isn't a destination. It's what you're standing in every time you say something true that nobody organized. I'm Sophia, and you've been listening to Conversations from PBS Radio. Oh, and may your questions be just a little unrulier than your credentials. Thanks for listening. We hope you'll tune in for our next conversation.
I'm Polly. Thanks for listening to Conversations with Suki and Sophia. We'll see you again with brand new conversations in September.